So last week we would have concluded secondary storage, the different kinds of storage devices and storage media that falls under secondary storage, and we looked at the difference between primary and secondary. Now this is your notes. Remember, you'll be making another video, so manage your time wisely this time so that you can finish your work on time. The notes from this point on are actually very short, so you have from today's class until next week to finish 1.6. I am uploading 1.7 one time so that you can get access to it if you want to start that for next week. So what we're looking at today is basically we're going to start looking at the software side of IT. The first 5 chapters, they would have looked at the fundamentals, basically the starting point, the breakdown of IT, and then we started looking at the various hardware. We looked at input devices, we looked at output devices, and then we looked at memory, and then secondary storage. So we're going to start 1.6 with system software. We're going to be looking at the kinds of system software, and that's it for today. So to get us started, we'd like a reader, and let's see who can read. Pamela, not. Can you read for us?
System software is a name given to the software that controls hardware and how all other software works. Examples of system software include operating systems and utility software.
Good. Read the next one. Operating system.
Operating system. The most commonly used system software is called an operating system. Without an operating system, a computer would not work. Popular operating systems include Microsoft Windows 10, Apple's Mac OS X, and many versions of
Linux.
Linux. Popular mobile operating systems include Apple iOS and Google Android.
Good. So, as you would have learned in your very first class, system software is the name given to the software that controls all the hardware of your computer. So your screen, your keyboard, your mouse, your hard drive, it controls all of them. The system software tells that hardware how to function. And it also tells other software how it needs to work. So let me see if the paragraph has it. So when we were looking at software in the beginning, there were 2 kinds of software. There is system software, and can you guys remember the other kind? Can anyone remember the other type of software? It starts with an A.
Application software.
Application software. So we have 2 types of software. We have system software and we have application software. So the system software controls the hardware and all the other software. So the other software is referring to the application software. So basically the system software controls the hardware and the other application software that run on your computer. Examples of a system software is the operating system and the utility software. Now, I'm now realizing that as I was checking your notes, no one drew the diagrams that I was given. So that's very good of you. So system software, there are two kinds. That means I won't be giving any more diagrams. So it seems as though I'm wasting my time with that. System software has two types. They are the operating system and the utility software. So there's basically two categories for your system software. Now the first category, which is basically the main kind of system software, is the operating system. So that is why even though utility software is a kind of system software, because the operating system is more dominant, when we say system software, we're usually talking about the operating system or the OS. So the operating system is the software that controls the system. So without this operating system, your computer will not work. This is what you are using on your computer in order for it to function. So without this OS, you would not be able to use your computer, your laptop, your tablet, whatever the case may be. Now, some examples of operating system include Microsoft Windows 10. Can you guys remember the earlier versions from Windows 10? What were?
So you mean the earlier versions of Windows?
Yes.
So Windows 98,
Windows 98, that's
XP,
one. Good.
XP, Vista.
Right. So, very good. We had Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7. We had a lot of Microsoft Windows. And currently, we're using Microsoft Windows 10. Now, for Apple,
And sir, Windows Mobile.
right.
Windows Mobile.
Now, for Apple, we're using Apple macOS X. Just like Microsoft, there's different versions. So macOS X is one variation, and there are other kinds of operating system for different companies. Another kind of operating system is Linux. I would have given Unix as another kind of operating system. UNIX, Unix, as another type of operating system. Now you can see Microsoft and macOS are for mostly home use because they're easier to use. But Linux and Unix are mostly used by organizations and companies because of their design and the reason why they are built. So for Linux and Unix, not everyday persons can be able to use them because of how they're designed. Now, for your mobile devices, they also have operating systems. On your Apple device, your operating system's name is Apple iOS. And basically any Android device, any Google device, or any other device, it is running Google Android. Now, just like the desktop or the computer operating system, there are different mobile operating system also, but these are just two of the popular examples of mobile operating system. There's also one called Tizen that was created by Samsung a while ago. So
Fire OS.
yeah, Amazon also has their mobile operating system also. I think that's called Fire too. So next we'll look at booting, and LeBron, I haven't seen you in a while, so you could read next.
Booting. The process of starting. The process of starting a computer is known as booting. The first thing a computer does when you turn on the power button is to check that it is working properly by following certain instructions held on a ROM chip known as the BIOS. BIOS. It will then look for an operating system to tell it what to do next. The operating system is loaded from this to the computer's random access memory RAM.
Good. So this here is the booting, basically refers to how your computer starts up. From the point of view pressing that power button on your computer or even your phone to you getting to the screen so that you can do some work on your computer. That is called the booting process when your computer is starting up. So when you press the power button on your computer, what happens is that it looks for this ROM chip. We would have discussed this in the memory chapter. This ROM chip, it stores the BIOS, and it basically has instructions that the computer carries out when it is starting up. So one of the instructions is actually it looks at all the hardware on your computer and it tests them, a quick test, to ensure that all of the hardware is functioning. For those of you who have a computer, at any point in time when you turn on the computer, have any one of you ever heard a beep sound? A single beep?
Yes, sir.
Right. That sound that you heard there is that step in the BIOS that checks your computer to see if all of the hardware is working. That step is called the POST step, POST, and POST stands for Power On Self-Test. So it basically tests the computer hardware to see what is working from not working. If it is working, you will get that single beep and your computer will continue to boot up. But if it doesn't work, or if something is not working, you will get a series of beeps, and that is a way of indicating that something is wrong with your computer. So that's basically one of the steps during booting. It looks for that ROM chip, it follows the instructions, which is the BIOS on that ROM chip. One of that instruction is running the POST test, the Power On Self-Test. Now, after that is completed, after it finished following the instructions inside of this ROM chip, it then looks for an operating system. So this part of the instruction here, it looks for an operating system. And when it finds that operating system, it loads the operating system into RAM. Remember, RAM is the memory that your computer uses to function so that it can send data quickly to the CPU. So your entire operating system is actually loaded into RAM. And that is how your computer basically functions. It all functions from the RAM. As remember, we need fast storage in order to run our computer. So that is why the operating system is loaded into the RAM in order to be used. So after the operating system is loaded into RAM, then the control is basically handed over to the operating system, and the operating system takes over the computer and runs the computer from there. So the booting process. When you press that power button, it looks for this ROM chip. It follows the instructions that the BIOS has, which is inside of the ROM chip. When it carries out that instruction, it finishes, it looks for an operating system. When it finds that operating system, it loads it from your disk, which would be your hard disk, a flash disk, whatever the case may be, and it loads it into the memory or the RAM of your computer. And the operating system takes over and runs your computer. And from that point, you're going to see it on the screen so that you can start using your computer. So let's see what else the operating system does. It does hardware control. So Jonathan, can you read for us?
Hardware control. The operating system supports tasks like accepting input and transferring data between primary and secondary memory or displaying output. It also sets the rules for controlling hardware resources such as peripheral devices like keyboard and mouse, the amount of memory used, CPU time allocation, and the disk space used.
Good. So remember, your operating system controls your hardware. So these are some of the controls it is carrying out. It carries out tasks like accepting input. It tells the hardware how to transfer data. It tells the hardware how to display output. It controls other hardware called peripheral devices. If you guys could remember in chapter 1, peripheral devices are any device outside of the CPU, like keyboard, mouse, and so on. So it controls these hardware and basically tells the computer when it can use the keyboard, when it can use the mouse, when it can use the memory, when it can use the CPU, when it can use the hard drive. So you can say the operating system is like the manager, and it tells the system or the computer who gets to use what and who gets to use it when, so that there's like control, so that there's no one fighting over a specific access to a device, so that there's no conflict and there's no delay when you're using your computer. So it manages who gets to use what, who gets to use it when, so that your computer functions smoothly. Now, along with hardware control, there's also software control. And let's see what are some examples of the software control. Akhilesh, can you read for us?
Software control. The operating system controls how all software, application, games, or other programs work on the computer.
Read the next one, memory management.
When a program or data is too large to fit in, called virtual memory can be used to split the program into manageable blocks. Required buffer between main memory and secondary storage to accommodate the program or data.
Good. So, going back to software control, remember your operating system not only controls your hardware, but it controls how all other software works. And these software include application software such as games and other programs such as Paint, Microsoft Word, Adobe Photoshop. So it tells them how they can work and so on, what hardware they can use when needed and so on. Now, another example of software control is memory management. So when we looked at memory, I would have said that in order for a program to function, or in order for your CPU to process data, it needs to access that data. And if you can remember from one of the diagrams that I would have given you, the data needs to be first pulled from your hard disk into your memory or your RAM. And if that data is too large to fit into the main memory of your computer or the RAM of your computer, if it is too large, then we can use a method called virtual memory. So basically, it uses memory from your secondary storage, which is like your hard drive, and it splits the program between the RAM and your hard drive. So there's a separate space now on your hard drive, or it can also be your flash drive, whatever you set it to, that stores the data that cannot be fit inside of your main memory inside of this virtual memory. So it splits it up. Piece is going to be inside of your main memory, and another part is going to be inside of your virtual memory. And your virtual memory is going to be on another device, either some sort of secondary storage, which is going to be either a flash drive, a hard drive, whatever you set it to. But the important thing to remember is that virtual memory is a space that is used to store data that cannot be fit inside of the main memory. But remember, these secondary storage are slow. So even though it can work, it will still function slowly depending on the secondary storage that you would have used. The next control for the operating system is input and output management. Input and output management. Arifa, can you read for us?
Input or output management. This each device has a program called driver that allows the device to communicate with the computer, the flow of information among devices, and the management format.
Thank you, even though we barely heard you. Kezia, can you read it back for us? Kezia? Morano, can you help us out?
Yes, sir. Okay, good. Since each device has a program called a driver that allows the device to communicate with the computer, the flow of information among devices must be managed and coordinated.
Good. So another management is input and output, and basically each device that is connected to your computer, your keyboard, your mouse, your flash drive, your hard drive, all of those devices, in order for them to communicate with your computer, they use a small software called a driver. And this is why you can actually connect any kind of device to any computer and it will work, because they use a software called a driver, and you can think of this driver like a translator. How this driver works is that when the device is connected to the computer, the driver now converts the instructions between the computer and the device so that they can be able to communicate with each other. So it doesn't matter what language your keyboard is speaking, you can say, basically, It doesn't matter what language it is speaking, it doesn't matter what language your computer is speaking. Once you have the correct driver that will be able to translate the two language between the two devices, they can be able to communicate with each other. So with that now, that's why you can connect any device to any computer, because the driver will be able to help those two devices, your computer, to communicate and tell it how to function. So with that in mind now, your computer, your operating system controls that also, so that it can manage who gets access to the device, if it's a flash drive, if it's a hard drive, if it is a keyboard, if it is a mouse. Your operating system controls who gets to access those devices, who gets to input information from those devices, and who gets to output data from those devices. Even your monitor has a driver, so that your computer can be able to communicate with that device and be able to manage it so as to who can be able to output information on the screen or whatever device you are using. Now the next management is process management. Amelie?
Process management
Give me a
allocates
second.
time for processes.
Hello, good afternoon. Yes. Yes. All right, no problem. Thank you. Yes. No problem. Yes, sorry about that. Amelia, you can go ahead.
Process management allocates time for processes to use the CPU. Checks when processes waiting to use the CPU and signals when the CPU is available.
Good. So remember, we're looking at the operating system and how it controls the hardware, how it controls the software. So process management is how your CPU controls how your operating system controls your CPU. So whereby your computer now, or your operating system, tells the computer who can be able to use the CPU, when, where, and how. So process management is that action there. It allocates time for processes. Processes is another term for applications that are running on your computer. So every time you open Google Chrome on your computer, it is called a process in your computer. So when that application or that process wants to use your CPU, your operating system now tells it when it can use it, how much it can use it, so that there's basically no one hogging the CPU, so that one application is taking over the entire CPU, and while you're using Chrome, you can't have Microsoft Word open and typing out your assignment. If there was no process management, you would not have been able to do that, because everyone would have been fighting to use the CPU at the same time. But because we can basically schedule who can use it, when, how, and how much, we can have different programs open and running different tasks. All because of process management. Now the last management is file management, and Crystal Dan, can you read for us?
Yes. Files need to be saved, copied, renamed, and deleted. A file manager checks the amount of memory needed to perform these tasks and manage the organization of the files in the secondary storage.
Good. Give me a second. Let me check something quickly. Right. So file management is basically another management of how how your operating system controls the software. So when you're copying a file, say for example, if you're copying a Word document, say you're copying your assignment or you're copying a music file from your computer to a flash drive, your operating system controls that also. So your operating system is going to schedule time for it to be copied, when it can be sent over to the flash drive, and all of that. It allows it to be renamed, deleted, it processes all of that, all of those actions there. Now, all of these tasks require access to the memory, it requires access to the RAM. RAM and memory is the same. It requires access to the storage. It requires access to the CPU. So that is why your operating system now, so for all of these management here, file management, process management, IO management, memory management, your computer uses all of the hardware on your computer. And now, if there is not someone basically like the operating system to tell who can use what, then we will not be able to have a computer that is working smoothly. So that is why the operating system is basically like the manager guiding all of these actions, all of these processes, so that there's a smooth flow inside of your computer. So every time you copy and paste a file, your operating system is controlling that, telling it that it can use so much of the CPU, it can use so much of the memory, it can use so much of your hard drive. When you open an application, it's doing the same thing again. It's telling your CPU, look, Google Chrome can only use maybe 10% of the CPU, or it can only use it for so long. So your operating system controls all of that. So that's what all of the management is about, basically. So the last type of software is the utility software. And Crystal Simon, you can read the last one for us.
Examples include detecting software that have process of directory, backing up files, and active software.
We barely heard that. So Ryan, can you read for us? Ryan?
Sir, can I read it instead?
Go ahead.
All right. Utility software. Utility software is a specialized software that tries. Oh wow. Utility software. Utility software is a specialized software that tries to protect and maintain the system software. Example include protecting software against damage caused by computer viruses, breaking up files, and recovering files after software has stopped working, which is crashed.
Good. So remember the first paragraph, we looked at there are two kinds of system software. There's the operating system and there's a utility software. I would have said that we generally call the system software the operating system because that's more dominant. Now, Utility software is the second kind of system software. So what you can think of the utility software as, you can think of it like a support to the operating system. So when you think of the operating system, you think of like a manager. It controls everything, it guides everything. But the utility software now is like an assistant. It is helping out the operating system in order to function. So what the utility software does, it is specialized software that protects and maintains the system software. So that's going to be your operating system. It's going to protect your operating system and it's going to maintain your operating system. So examples include protecting against computer viruses. So what is the name of the application that protects you against a computer virus? What's the general name? What do you call it? I think we looked at this already. It starts with A also.
Antivirus.
An antivirus software. So software that protects you against viruses is called an antivirus software, and that will be considered a utility software because it's protecting the operating system or the system software. So I think I remember teaching that already. We have any one of the viruses name and you put the word anti in front of it. Antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spyware. So those are the viruses name and they're all utility softwares. Now, other than protecting against viruses, utility software also backs up the files. So we would have looked at that term also. Backing up refers to saving the file basically to another location so that if something happens to the original, you can get access to a backup or a second copy. And utility software also helps us to recover files. So maybe if we accidentally deleted a file or our computer has stopped working, like if we just we got blackouts, our computer crashed, then we can recover maybe a file that we were working on. All of that falls under utility software. Remember this term crash? It refers to the computer when it has stopped working. So I haven't designed this form as yet. You'll see it, hopefully you see it sometime by the end of the day. And you will see it in your classroom for you to complete as homework once again for chapter 1.6. So, in review for today, we looked at system software. System software, it controls the hardware and it controls other software. It controls how all of those things work. There are two kinds of system software. There is the operating system and there is the utility software. The operating system controls the hardware. It tells it how it should function. It carries out tasks such as hardware control, software control. It carries out tasks such as memory management, input and output management, process management, file management. So all of these management here are all the ways that your operating system controls the hardware and software, but just that they are broken down into like different categories. And last, we looked at your utility software and how that basically supports your operating system. It's like the assistant, whereas your operating system is like the manager for the computer. We looked at the booting process also. Remember, when your computer is booting, when you first press that power button, even on your phone, it looks for that ROM chip that has the instructions on it, and it follows those instructions. When it has completed those instructions, what it will do next is look for your operating system. When it finds your operating system now, it will then load that operating system into RAM, and from that point now, your computer can be usable. So when all of it is loaded into RAM, when you see your the starting icon on your computer, Windows is starting up, and you see that logo and all of that, that's basically Windows being loaded into your RAM. So you're just waiting there for everything to be loaded, everything to start up, so that you can start using your computer. So that's the booting process. So, is there any question on any one of the parts of the operating system that we covered today? Yes or no?
No, sir.
Anyone with any?
Sir, booting part, you said there was
Sir.
a specific test that goes on when it starts. Was it post power on self-test?
Yeah, post
Was
POST,
that before?
POST, power on self-test.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, quick question.
Yes.
On Thursday, do we have school?
No, I don't think we'll have school because Thursday's a holiday.
So we won't have school on Thursday. Okay, cool.
Let me take that back. I shouldn't be saying anything because I don't know what they will do, but I would assume that since it's a holiday, it shouldn't be any school.
Okay, sir.
Any questions pertaining to today's topic? Alright, seems you guys have no questions. If you guys don't have any other questions, you are free to leave. This is the end of today's class. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, sir.